All right, take two. Meeting called to order. Today is Tuesday, April 8th. I got that far. Town council public hearing, town council chambers, 1170 Main Street. Jay, will you lead us in prayer?
We ask for the wisdom to make good decisions, to speak with confidence and listen with compassion, and to work together to create a better way of life for the people of West Warwick. Amen.
Mark, will you pledge allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Councilman Dennison?
Here.
Councilman Lichardi is absent. Councilman Messier?
Here.
Council Vice President Williamson?
Here.
Council President Coughlin?
Here.
Quorum is declared. Public hearing on proposed fiscal year 2026 municipal budget.
Good evening. So I'll repeat a majority of what I've said at the last few meetings with some minor updates. We've already had our public workshops, which started the public process of reviewing and vetting the FY 2026 budget as presented by the respective department heads and the town manager. During these first two Tuesdays in April, we've held the public hearings where the council will make adjustments to this proposal after considering public comment and welcome input. Our department heads continue to be considerate of the town's fiscal constraints and the fluctuating status of the economy while drafting requests that will support the continuation of services expected by our community and provide for the upgrading of infrastructure necessary to offer those services safely and more efficiently. I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of our finance director, Kristen Benoit, in producing this proposal with me and keeping us on a reasonable and conservative path. Our recent budget processes continue to be affected by the uncertainty of the finalized state budget, federal funding sources, the national economy, inflation fluctuations, and rising supply cost. How these all affect our FY 2026 revenue and expenditure planning remains a work in progress. Some key budget points, some of which were from my original proposal and some which are now upgrades since it's about a month since we last submitted that proposal. Our total budget increase is approximately $5.9 million. That's inclusive of approximately $1.8 million in municipal expenses, $3.1 million for school state aid pass-through appropriation, and a request to increase the local school department appropriation by a little more than $991,000. The levy increase that has been adjusted to include the most recent valuations after some appeals and tangible returns is approximately 3.99%, or a little more than $2.7 million. The approximate tax increase considering those adjustments at this point is 2.75% tax rate increase. And again, that still may fluctuate slightly as other tangible annual returns come back and tax revaluation appeals get finalized. Capital expenditure requests totaling a little more than $1.2 million have been eliminated in my proposal with the hope of restoring several key needs if funds become available or federal, state, and private grants and aid gets awarded. ARPA funds are no longer available. We have fully transitioned into the employee retirement system of Rhode Island. Rates provided by ERSRI have been applied to all pensionable salary types within their respective departments. Legacy plan employer rates have increased for FY 26. In the original proposal, we had a 5.2% anticipated increase in our healthcare working rates. The transition to the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust for Healthcare Management has been successful. Not worthy of changing, the rates have, in the proposal, our rates have come in with healthcare being 5.66% and dental coming in at 5.07. The 7.5% increase was applied to our property and liability insurance premiums over the FY 25 rates. The increase to workers' comp is due to a slight increase in our experience modification for FY 26 work-related injury expense is also in this line as well. The proposal that I submitted has a tax collection rate of 97.0%. There is no planned use for fund balance in my FY '26 proposal. The one thing I held out and saved for last, I know, has raised a few questions, so I'll read what I originally stated, and if you want me to go into it a little deeper to try to make it more clear, I will. Funds that were reserved for anticipated collective bargaining salary adjustments for unionized staff and salary adjustments for non-union personnel in the FY '25 budget still need to be proportionally dispersed this month, the start of the fourth quarter, which we'll do we're proposed to do at the April 22nd meeting. The salary and related accounts in this FY '26 proposal will appear disproportionate until then. If you want me to try to explain that a little more clearly, I will,
Yeah.
since I know.
Could you give us an example?
Certainly. So if you go back to this time last year, we were operating under the fiscal '23 budget, operating under fiscal '24 budget, preparing fiscal '25. We were in contract negotiations, collective bargaining with all three unions. So the proposal that we were looking at last year did not have any salary adjustments in the various salary line items. There was some amount of money that was reserved in a general government account in anticipation of some of those salaries, which I just mentioned. We want to properly disperse that amount in the fourth quarter, which just started April 1st, and that will happen at the April 22nd meeting. So the proposal that you have before you considering tonight, FY '26, has the benefit of knowing what those raises were back then, and also what the raises are going forward starting July 1st. So what you're looking at tonight shows 2 more years of salary increases, adjustments, as opposed to what you last considered, because 1 year was a lump sum in a general government line, if that makes more sense.
So if I, just because my head's a little, so if 2 years ago, someone's salary was $100, and ultimately we agreed upon a 3% raise, their salary should be in the FY '25 budget 103,
Correct.
but it's not. It's still 100 until we make the adjustment. So when you look at the FY '26 budget, it might appear as though it's a $6 raise, because if it was 3 and 3, it's now 106 in the '26 budget compared to 100 in the '25 budget, because we haven't upped it to 100. So it looks like a $6 increase, but it only would be a $3 increase. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So basically, if we were doing this in another 3 weeks, and that money had already been allocated at that point, we would see a different salary.
If we
Wow.
updated
Right.
this whole booklet
Right.
with that information.
Okay. I got it. I know that was one of my questions earlier today. I was pretty sure I understood where you were coming from, but I think you just really solidified it. Appreciate it.
So again, in conclusion, I know it's a lot of hard work. We've had some updated numbers and another month of historical data that Chris and I have discussed. So we'd be comfortable with some additional recommendations should you care to hear them from us. Other than that, we look forward to continue to collaborate with you all to craft a budget that's responsible to provide the services that are expected of us.
Any questions for Mark here before I have a couple of things I just want to cover real quick. One, I apologize if I happen to walk out. I'm in the same boat. I have a family emergency possibly going on, so if I have to step out, I'm sorry. Secondly, Councilman Licciardi, he's not here tonight, but he did put together an email that he would like to be read into public by myself. He said, "I'm not able to attend tonight's public hearing. I have a family commitment that is just as important, and I am a father as well as a councilman. I believe that this year's vote is critical and can actually set the tone for the future years. We can't ignore the school bond possibility and future school employees that will be needed to fill critical positions and future employee increases that will be before us next year and the year after. I've stated at some point a few weeks ago that I would like to be at 1% or less for a tax increase. A 1% is still difficult to those who have no other source of income or have worked all their lives to enjoy retirement and incur the rise in payments for electric, insurance, food, medical, and everything else needed to survive. This department, in parentheses, also has to be considered in our discussion. After listening at both budget presentations in the first public hearing, I have narrowed down some possible adjustments for the council for discussion points to consider tonight. One, increasing late fees from 12 to 15%, not filling vacant positions, holding Saturday bulk pickups one time per month rather than two, and doing second bulk during normal business hours, Monday through Friday. In parentheses, to me, this is simply just a schedule and adjustment. Using a portion of our cash reserve, we had $1.1 million in surplus last year. The portion suggested is $250,000, which gives us a $850,000 surplus from last year. Keep in mind that was voted on to be spent last year. Given the school department a portion of what is being asked, for round numbers, give them $741,000 of the $991,000 that was requested, leaving $250,000 not to be given. I find that we will be having to tighten our budget for the next few years, and like Council President has said already, that we've had some good years and times are going to be tough. Please understand that there is only so much money in the pot, and relying on the taxpayers for a significant amount each year cannot continue. Signed, Jason Lechardi. So I just want to point that out. I read that in the record for him while he's out with his family matters. So I know I sent an email, I had some of that in there this morning. I think I sent it to Town Manager Kristen and Mary Beth first thing in the morning. And then I forwarded it throughout to each council member singly so they know what I had sent over as suggestions. And again, I think some of that is in there, some of it's not. I'm just gonna point out the differences from what I had sent over. And again, I apologize that I didn't have it printed and all that because I was planning on being here. I guess Mary Beth has it printed for me. Thank you. And Mark sends out a weekly update, and I know one of the suggestions was bumping collections up to 97.35. I asked why not 97.5, because we are historically high in that area. Also, did we get a revenue guesstimate in moving late fees from 12% to 15 or 18 effective July 1, 25? A resolution would have to be done to do that, I think. What positions are currently vacant in the town? With all automation, Dropbox, open positions being considered and cut, I hear we may be doing more with less already. A question that has come up is July 1 department head increases across the board. I thought it was 3%, but I could be wrong. Well, because my budget was actually, I left it here last time. But yes, that is right, it is by 3%. If no open positions have been considered, what has been considered? I know there is a freeze. How can a position be cut in a contract, either currently vacant or filled? I would prefer vacant. If not vacant, we really need to assess our office needs and wants. Also looking at our surplus using $350K. What would that do? I'm not a fan of doing this. But I also understand that the budget needs to be under 2%. So, you know, that's my email to the town manager and the rest of the council this morning. You know, exploring all options, because here we are in the final aspects of this budget. So I know it's tough decisions. What's right for the town, what's right for the taxpayer, what's, you know, we have to look at it all. And, you know, and again, this is a public hearing, but I just wanted everybody to know, that's the two communications that I know of, and I know Mary Beth's had some conversations with others and town manager, and I know, Mark, I know you've inquired on a lot of things. So that's where we stand, but we're gonna go into public hearing. Any public comments or questions on the budget? And we go back to the council once that's done. Any public? Going, I hear the grunts.
I tell them go to be quiet, but. Good evening. I basically just asked some questions.
Just state your name and address on record, John.
John Reed, 62 Andrews Avenue. One of the things I can't find, I'm sure it's here somewhere, is we have, I believe, substantial revenue from details. Where is that money?
It's a special revenue fund.
Special revenue fund?
So they use that to buy their police vehicles, so they don't put that on the taxpayer. They just used it to do their whole dispatch console upgrade there. I think that was almost 600,000. They did not have to use taxpayer money for that.
No, I know it's a revenue.
Yeah, it's in the
And I
special
can't
revenue.
find it in
Not in the general.
the
fund.
police. That's where I would think it would be.
You know, it's a special revenue fund. It's not part of the general fund.
So that kind of helps the police department take care of their own, which is a good thing. The reimbursement line under that for SRO, I think that's from the school.
Correct.
Last time I was up here, I spoke about this, and at the end of the day, it still didn't make sense to me. This should have to do with legal. In the judgment settlements. In previous years, there was adopted numbers, okay? Whether they went under or above, that's not a discussion for tonight, but that was a line item in there. This year, it's not, it doesn't show there. That only tells me one thing. You know that line's gonna get filled with something. And it looks like the average is over $100,000. Right now, in the 225 budget, you adopted 106,875. Through 311, you've already spent 131,875.
So we budgeted the 106 because we had a known settlement that was gonna be spread over 4 years. So we knew that that was coming. There was an additional one that we settled in a smaller amount this year. We didn't know when that was gonna get settled, if it was gonna get settled. So usually we budget if we know that there has been a settlement, and we definitely have. We don't wanna put something that we don't know on the taxpayer. We don't know if there's any other settlements coming down the road. This one is done. The
Okay, so-
one for 168.75, the last one was fiscal year 25.
Right, so a portion of that makes sense to me. My next question is, okay, you get $100,000 settlement. Where's that money gonna come from?
It would have to come from, either the difference between our revenues and our expenses, so it would come out of our surplus. Or if we broke even that year, then it would come out of our fund balance, which is basically.
And our surplus is what, roughly?
They vary from year, this past year, fiscal year 24, it was $1.1 million. We just did really well with revenues, especially the, investment income. We invested wisely.
I guess in my mind, that somewhat works. The security, I mean, the crossing guard things, we already straightened that out last week. It's in 2 different areas, but it
Right,
needs to get
we are
subtracted
paying
from
for
somewhere.
it. The school can adjust their budget, take it out of their budget. If not done, they're not paying for it anymore.
All right, my next question is, under fire and police, you have fleet maintenance. Does that go to DPW mechanics?
I think some of it does.
Some of it's not.
It's the cost of the parts for the vehicles that belong to each department.
But the services of fixing them is under DPW mechanics?
Yes.
Okay. So. Mechanics salary without overtime benefits and all that other stuff. A little over $500,000. Does DPW get reimbursed from the police department, the fire department? For their services to other department vehicles?
No,
Pay to whatever.
not for their,
No,
not for their time, no. Their job is to fix the town vehicles. It's the cost of the supplies that
Yeah,
is
you got pots and
dispersed
so
out
forth and so
to
on.
the different departments, but the time is not.
I would just think that if it was service, because a lot of other things are transferable. And just in my mind, it would make sense that if the fire department had something fixed, that labor cost would wind up to the DPW. And according to this, the pots and everything, they pay for them themselves, so it's just an operational thing that I didn't understand. Like I said, you know, $500,000 for mechanics, it's without overtime.
How many mechanics do we have?
Or I believe.
We couldn't even hire mechanics because,
Oh, no,
So
it's a hard
there's-
thing to fill, I understand,
no, I don't think, I don't,
Business
listen, if
portion.
it's 125,000 for 4 mechanics each. I kind of find that hard to believe, so I just want to clarify.
Salary is 262. The
Yeah.
big chunk is 2 of them are in the legacy MERS plan and their pension.
Yeah, but he said just their salary was $500,000. I don't,
No,
I
no,
know,
it's
I don't think that's
272,000.
right. It's salary.
Their
and
total-
with benefits? maybe
Salary and benefits is 533.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
so,
Excuse me. Thank you.
and John, I know, because that's one position we had trouble filling at $50-something thousand
Yeah,
a year.
Like I said, I'm not looking at any of this, and I'll repeat myself from the last meeting. I don't see where anybody in here is overpaid. Okay? Give or take, but I mean, on a, you know, fire, police, DPW, when you break down their hours, I don't see that as.
Yeah, I just don't want a lot of mechanics tomorrow knocking on a door applying for a job for 125,000, that's
Well,
not.
maybe I did a good advertising. But at this point, you know, I'm not gonna ask later on. I am really curious going forward, how this benefit package breaks down.
I'm gonna tell you the biggest chunk is the legacy pension. Our ARC for fiscal year 25, for fiscal year 26 is $11.74 million, $11,740,000. So that ARC is not gonna go away for years, and it's gonna get spread out between fewer and fewer employees, because as people retire and we bring in new people, they're going in the new MERS. So when you see the ones that have smaller benefit and salaries, those people are new MERS. And the difference between old MERS and new MERS is staggering.
Oh, it is, I understand.
So that is the biggest chunk of what you see in the
There's a lot of
benefit section.
cities and towns with paying for sins of the past, but that's life.
We certainly are.
Another question. Library. Their gas bill for the year is $9,000. I'll take that. Their electric bill is $45,000.
That's their portion of the wind turbines.
That's not, yeah, that's.
and
their-
it's not a bill.
So our electric, when you see all electric bills, that is their portion to pay back on the bond for the turbines, which is on our 10th year.
In fiscal year 26 would probably be about our 10th year. It was
And
26.
it's a 20-year bond. if I
Yeah,
remember correctly.
yeah.
So within 9 years, you're gonna see that, 9 to 10 years, you'll see that adjust on. the budget.
I'm just going like, it says electricity,
Yeah. And it's
45,000.
based on usage.
Without the explanation, I'm saying, this doesn't make any
So
sense.
we never pay an electric bill. And we actually have built up credits over the years, as David said. We have a bond payment that is due every year, and it's based on, so if the library uses 10%, they get 10% of the bond payment. If the next year they use 12, it goes up a little bit. So
And with that being said, you look at electricity 10 years ago, where it is today, average home was $80 to $90 10 years ago, and everybody was questioning us. Well, average home's over 300 now.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the town did a very smart thing, because our bond payment's the same based upon interest,
Mhm.
but, our electric bill stays the same, so we're pretty steady on that.
Yeah, the new, electric commission and the new company did a real good job to us with, distribution and supply and all the other nice stuff they wanna throw in there.
So the departments have virtually no control over what that
No,
electric
no, no.
number is.
But as
That's
a line
something-
item and not be
Yep,
privy
Fair
to,
enough,
you
fair
know,
enough.
you look at electric, $45,000. Not knowing the reasoning behind it, that's a big number.
And no, Colin, you're not getting any of that back, okay? Yeah.
That answers most of my questions. I'm just gonna say the same thing again. I understand you gotta run the town. Town has to be efficient. But don't hurt any more of the elderly than they're already getting hurt. Because I'll say it again, $35 increase, $50 increase, I could care less. I'll go make it tomorrow morning on top of what we do. Those people are fixed. $35 is like a 2,000 to me. And everything on that side that they can't control is going up. And in my opinion, they've already paid their dues to this town. A lot of them, they've already been paying their taxes for years when they were working. Why should they be nailed to the cross when they're rounding third base? I think that's a conscience that you have to live with. You all have neighbors, you all have family. Somehow, you know, the budget balances, but that's easy to do. It's just numbers, so that comes out at the bottom line, I get it. Right? I could do that all day long. But somewhere along the line, and this is just my opinion, how I do things, 2.5% to 5% departmental budget decrease, I would have asked, had the departments do, and bring them to me. I broke it down myself, I'm not going through a lot. A lot of departments at 5% is not a lot of money to take back. And in the working world, when you're working with these numbers, I don't think 5% is a lot of money. But unless you mandate that your departments hand you something, it may not even work. But that's when you know, okay, 5% hurts DPW. You have a meeting. You say, whoa, this is gonna really hurt our operation. It gives the director time to explain to the town manager, okay, 5% is too much for you. What about 2.5? But when you don't stop with a benchmark, in my opinion, I mean, you run this company, I run mine. If you don't stop with a benchmark and see how far you can stretch it, how do you come up with a number? I mean, you can just fill the gaps. Filling the gaps is easy. You got 3 years, okay, you put the number in it. But in order, if it was me, I would have had them do it. Sit with the town manager. If it hurts, okay, explain to me where it hurts. Maybe it's not a 5% for this department. Maybe it's a 2. But if you don't get to where it hurts, you never know where you can live. But those people that you're gonna tax are already hurt.
I have 2 comments on that. I think I'll let the manager speak for himself, but I know for a fact that he's had all his department heads in his office to discuss the budget. So that is one thing that I know he has. I know the council has year over year continued to try to keep, everybody keeps talking about what the taxpayer voted for years ago was 4%, 4%, 4%, and we as a council pushed back on our managers in the past and even said, we want to stay below 4%. We don't want to authorize 4%. So, the other thing about our budget is probably about 90%, 92% is already fixed. It's payroll, benefits, and pension. We have 8 to 10% to play with and to figure out where we want to cut on that budget. That is the toughest part. And yes, we did vote for contracts. Yes, we voted for increases for the employees. And we talked about those increases here in public when we made it clear that our budget's gonna go up 3% no matter what every year, just on the payroll side. 3 to 6%, depending on depending on the contract, that it's going to go up that much. We made it clear in public that that is going to happen. And John, you say it, you said it, our employees are not overpaid by no means. Are there some benefits in there, like longevity or whatever, that may help them even more? That's the stuff that you might not really see in an employee's payroll, is their longevity. So somebody walking in the door here on year one, they don't have longevity, it's year 5 and stuff like that. 4 or 5. And as the longer they stay here, the more longevity. And I've always had my discussions with employees here. Like I come from a private industry. I believe that if I've been somewhere 25 years, the person walking in the door the same day as me doesn't get the same rate of pay as me. But that's how it works, like down at DPW. Like if a laborer gets $22, I'm just throwing numbers out there, a laborer gets $22, he's been here for 10 years, he's making $22. The person comes in at that rate, basically what is on the contract, the rate on the contract. So I don't agree with it, you know, I believe but that's where the longevity comes in. But we have 10% to figure out what to deal with. And, you know, when we had the sewer meeting last time, I heard from Tony saying they had 28% to play with. I was like, wow, you got a lot more to play with than we do. So it's one of those things that, what services do you want? You know, when somebody asks me, cut this, cut that, what services don't you want? You know, and I've been here long enough to see you cut fire, God forbid, something happens. It's their fault, it's our fault. Police, you don't have enough people patrolling the streets, the town's not safe. Kids not educated, they're our future. You know, so we have to look at many different aspects of it. I know it's not easy. And yeah, I think all of us are up here taxpayers. So we also look at it that way also. And some people up here are retired. You know, you're not gonna, it's hard to satisfy everybody. And I've heard, you know, I just asked for inquiry. We have some elderly people, I think 2 now remaining in the town that are on a tax freeze from the 90s, that when the town did institute the tax freeze. And I think, what year did that stop? That was in 98, 97, something like that. It was when the mayors were here, actually, so it might have been in 92, 93. But they're still here today on a tax freeze. God bless them. Like, I was doing the math in my head, 65, 30 years has gone by. You know, I'm like 95 to 105 years old, depending on when I'm like, are they still here? And they are. There's two residents that are on tax freeze. I bought my grandmother's house in Coventry. It was on tax freeze. Day I closed, I was like, great, my taxes are on $1,800. 3 days later, Coventry sent me the new bill. It was $4,200. It was because she was on a tax freeze. So, and they don't, a lot of towns are looking at getting away from the tax freeze, which is unfortunate and it's hard to do. But again, then you look, okay, we tax freeze the elderly, and then you got a 22-year-old coming in buying a house, struggling, and they're like, well, why am I paying for that one? Why am I paying for that one? So we get that. You know, years ago, we talked about multifamilies. We hit 3-family and above with 25% tax increase one year, with basically evaluation and everything else. And we had the multifamily owners in here yelling at us. But that's how it goes. I mean, we have a tiered system here, which not too many communities have. If you're not aware of it, some towns have one system. No matter what your house value is, whether it's 2-family, 3-family, it's one tax rate. We have a tiered tax rate. We try to keep the single family down as low as possible. 2-family owner occupied as low as possible. You look at the tax rates on multifamily, they're 7, 8, 9, some are even more than $10 per 1,000 than what a single family is. So I'm giving councils through the years credit, not, before I was here, you know, they came up with a tiered tax system, you know, how do you fix it? If we get away from the tiered tax system, I can guarantee everybody's taxes are gonna go up drastically, and some are gonna come down. It's enough for my spiel. Mark?
So. This is my least favorite part of this job that I've taken on here. It's really because, like Dave said, and like many people have said, there are people who can adjust to a small tax increase a lot easier than some others who are on fixed incomes and whatnot. I think instead of focusing on a number, a percentage of an increase, whether it's 2.75, 2.7, 2.38, 1%. The way I look at it is, have we done everything we can possibly do in the interest of the taxpayer, financially speaking? Are we being fair to them? And by fair, it's not giving them the lowest tax increase that we can, because it's going to be an increase. It's not going to be a give back, but are we also being fair by giving them all the services that they've come to deserve? So there's a fine line there. I know in the school department, they've done a lot to get off of their original need number, which was over 5 million, right, Karen? It was over 5 million, and it's down to under 1. And they did that with some pain. They had to look at cutting some positions and some other things, and there are, you know, a lot of us were up at the high school during that meeting, and there were a lot of upset folks who may potentially face a permanent layoff. It's not easy. It's something we have to do. I still, with that being said, I think there's still work to be done on the town side of the budget, at least. Again, I'm not going to be so bold as to go line by line and say, I think you should cut here, I think you should cut there. We have a very capable town manager who has very capable department heads. My big ask from them is to make sure that they go and look at their budgets line by line. And maybe it is bringing it to that point of pain where, okay, we can do this. It might affect me over here, but I can deal with that by managing a situation, whatever it might be. And that's with the understanding, like the council president said, we're not playing with 100% budget here. It's 8 to 10% that we can actually manipulate and move around. Everything else is already spoken for. So with that being said, I'm not in love with the 2.75 number. I'm going to be honest with that. I don't like that. I think, again, folks like myself still bring in a monthly paycheck. I have the ability to go out and earn when I need to. It's a different story, but there are a lot of people in this town that aren't in that position. So I think we have to look towards them. And, you know, I to be honest with you, Dave, I didn't even think about the folks who are just trying their hardest to start their lives off in purchasing a home and everything that goes along with that. They have it way harder today than we did 30 years, 40 years, 20 years, whatever it might be. So we have to protect those folks too, because they are the future of our town as well. So I would just ask, you know, take another hard look. I'm not all jazzed up about the 2.75%. And again, it's not really about the number with me. It's when the manager and his department heads can come to us and say, we have absolutely done our best to wring water out of this stone. And then I will be satisfied and we'll move forward with whatever we need to do.
Anybody else?
I think you hit most of the things in your email that you read today. I mean, the one thing that I had marked down when we first did the talks was the adjustment for the tax collection rate.
So I have some proposals. Do you want?
Yeah, I actually asked, yeah, if you could, I mean, we talked about 97.35. I think keeping in mind in a year that we're doing a reval, it's a very dangerous game to play because you don't know really what you're going to collect. Keeping in mind that after July 1, when tax bills go out, people may still come in and ask for their taxes to be reviewed, so it could affect it. So, but I think there is room, although I'm always very conservative, to move that 97 number up. I think you read in yours. maybe-
97.5.
I would even ask you, so if we go to 97.5, 6, 7, 8, if you know what that would be?
And do I
Because
have
I
it all
believe you,
provided?
I think you did provide, and thank you, that we've been able to collect 98% typically.
Yeah.
So I would not go to 98, I think especially in a year where we're doing a revale and there's so much uncertainty, but if you have some numbers, that would be good.
So I wanted to propose, some adjustments to revenue with, more.
Which is
time.
really the same thing, right? If you think about it,
Um,
if you increase revenue, you're also increase the collection number, you're kind of double dipping, but go ahead.
well, no, it's revenues, that decrease the, what we're taxing.
Okay.
So other
Okay.
revenues decrease the tax rate.
All right, perfect.
So, looking at, the investment interest, based on what we've been receiving and the fact that interest rates are still hovering in the 4% area, I was comfortable in moving investment interest up another 50K to 300,000. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Scratch that, reverse that, I did not say that. That was
Just going
investment
one-
income, I was gonna go up 25,000 to 275. That's much as I'll let go of my conservativeness. The interest on delinquent taxes. I know that there's been discussion about bringing that from 12 to either 15 or 18%, and we looked back. We saw that it was 18% in 1992. By 2012, we know it was 12%, but we couldn't figure out where and when it
So
changed.
2010-ish, 10, 12-ish,
Okay,
it was done. It was Councilman Badula at the time was the one who proposed it. And I thought we did it by resolution here in the council chambers, but
it looks like. it was
off
on-
Mark's notes here, it looks like it was done at the town financial meeting as a warrant and an ordinance, so we'll have to see if we can find that. I thought we did it here and we voted on it as a council, maybe to bring it before the voters, that might have been it. But, one of the big things was, at the time, you know, it was, things weren't as, lucrative, there was a, kind of like somewhat of a recession going on. And we had a lot of people that, you know, said, hey, I'm never gonna get caught up at 18%, but what can we do? We talked about bringing it all the way down to 6 at one time. But you look at and again, I know I've had a conversation with, I think, Councilman Licciardi on this, it's the same way I feel about sewer and the same way I feel about taxes. The person who's here on July 15th to pay their taxes, all shot in 1 year, they ask, why don't I get a reward for paying everything all up front? You know, like a 1% reward or whatever. And then I'm sitting here saying, okay, the people who come here and pay their taxes on time get really no reward except for no late fees. But the people who are constantly late, and we all see sometimes it's on there for business reasons why they're late. We understand it. They have their own ways of moving their money around and doing whatever. We all get a late collection. We get the tax letter from Rose every 3 months, maybe every quarter, basically telling us who's delinquent. The list is pretty high. But why are we punishing the person who's paying on time and helping the person who's not paying on time? I know you're gonna have your different situations, don't get me wrong. You might have that elderly person that might not have the dollar to pay for it. But, you know, maybe it's more that it helps the collection rate to 99% because they don't wanna pay that 18%. So I look at it as, whatever, we're not getting the interest here, but we're gonna get a higher collection rate. So how do we do it? And, you know,
I did find this old resolution. It looks like it was the resolution we passed when we're passing the budget, the levy, and it's written down here that it was 12%. So I think it's kind of like a resolution, but it's almost like the budget resolution that we do.
and
We can do today.
Was that in 2012?
It's the levy
Yeah.
resolution.
The levy resolution.
which is 2012. And Angelo signed it as council president, so.
Right. So based on that, if we work on increasing what you decide to increase it to, I propose going back up to the 500,000, so go up by 50,000 on the interest for the penalties for that. Also comfortable going up on the building revenue by 50,000 and adding another 25,000 from tax sale fees that we collect. So that would be a total adjustment to revenues of 150,000. If you're amendable to that, then I have some scenarios with different collection rates and what the tax rate increase would be and the levy increase would be based on the 150,000.
If you're,
If you're
com-
comfortable with
I'm
those,
comfortable.
if you're
Because if
comfortable
you're
with-
not, it's not,
Yeah.
don't put in a number that we, it's a
No,
make-believe number.
I can live with, well, you know, I'm conservative.
Okay,
So, having a few extra months of data to look at and see what, and also see that things haven't really changed much for interest rates. They're not plummeting at this time. We're locked in on a lot of stuff, so,
okay.
I'm comfortable.
I would say, I would absolutely say, I mean, do you need a motion to do that?
Yeah, motion to accept my proposal.
Motion to accept Kristen's
Second.
proposal to increase revenue by 150,000, 25 for investment interest, 25 on fees on late. 50 on fees on late, building revenue by 50 and tax sale fees by 25.
Can we hear it all before we do that? Can you hear?
I'd go piece by piece, actually,
Go
because
piece
you
by
might get
piece.
overwhelmed with
Yeah,
all the
going back.
information, because it looks like she has a lot based off the answers.
Typically, but we could, we can go back and change it if we need to.
Okay.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. So $150,000 increase in revenues.
Okay, so based on that, if we stayed at 97%, the tax rate increase would be 2.53%, levy would be 3.8%. If we went to 97.35% collection rate, the tax rate increase would be 2.10, and the levy increase would be 3.41. If we ventured to 97.5% in the collection rate, we would be at a 1.96% increase in the tax rate and 3.29% on the levy. And I even went as far as 97.7% collection rate would bring us to a 1.75 tax rate increase and 3.08% on the levy.
What was that, Nathan?
Thank you.
Which one?
No, the final one you said.
97.7.
97.7 collection.
So,
And that would be without any cuts, without any
That
other
would be,
adjustments.
that would be right now strictly with the adjustment of adding the other revenues, which decreases what we need for tax.
Yeah, I feel strongly about getting under 2. 1 seems a little more.
yeah, one would be onerous to get to, and I'm not sure that, given the fact that we know that we have contractual increases more than that.
Well, I just want to point out 991,000 is over 1%.
And
And
I'd like, actually, I in good conscience would not vote for reducing that at this point in time. The schools have done a great deal of work. They cut over $3 million from their original budget.
Yeah,
They've cut positions
We
to
just
the,
had,
to
we just
the,
had at that meeting 2 weeks ago. where
that's
they
right.
had-
It
so,
it was obvious that there's need, and credit to the schools, to Karen and her team in the school committee. They don't come and ask when they don't need it. And it's clear that there are a lot of unknowns. I would be hard pressed to vote for any budget that didn't include the full amount at this point in time, because there's still uncertainty as far as that budget goes. They've used up most of, not all of, but most of their surplus. They're not using any in their budget at this point in time, and I'll get to that in a minute, because as a recovering accountant, in my mind, you don't take it out of the piggy bank to balance a budget. You just don't. I'm even a little uncomfortable increasing the expected collection rate, but I'm more comfortable with that. Ultimately, it will hit your surplus if indeed you don't meet those numbers. So it's a roundabout way of using your surplus potentially. So I'm, as far as I'm concerned, the 991,750 stays in the budget. So
So one of the things I'm concerned about is, in the not too distant future, the people of the town are gonna be asked potentially to look at some big numbers for projects for the schools. And I want to make sure that we are best positioning ourselves for that time. Because at that point, it's going to take whatever wiggle room we have and it's going to really collapse it. And there may be other immediate needs in the town that just can't be ignored at that time. That's why I think, as far as I'm concerned, I really want to get this to a point where I feel comfortable that we can start looking at how to absorb those. And it's not just the building costs, it's the operational cost that concern. That's what kind of the larger of the unknowns at this point. So that's what I'm looking at in terms of what we do now and how it can help us 1, 2, 3 years down the road, and then beyond that for operational costs and how we'll handle those.
So the one thing I want to point out, and I've pushed back a few times with the school department with state aid, and I know, me and the chairman last year were going back and forth here and outside of here in discussing it, and they were never easy conversations and always respectful. But the one thing I do want to point out, since Karen's been superintendent and her whole staff and departments and everybody, they worked very hard to try not to ask us for anything or keep the money going. They've been self-maintaining their buildings out of their surpluses and whatever else, and they never had to come to us too often. But the one thing I want to point out is I look around us, Coventry, Warwick, Cranston, Providence. Providence had the state come in, take over their schools. Coventry kept an eye, and Coventry town councils have kept an eye on the school department money when they're sitting there telling them we're $8 million in debt. We need to do something. And of course, the councils put their feet in the ground and said, no, we're not giving you anything. Well, now look at where they are.
And that's a big concern, right?
Warwick, same thing. Warwick's, I think, what, 12 to 14 million?
Right.
Without even the schools being built.
Right.
And they're building 2 brand new schools.
And we don't want to put
North
our,
Kingston is in the news media this week with the same type of headaches.
Right.
And, I get it, as a council, we do our best to not spend the money. And we, at the end of the year, when our audit comes back and we're saying we have a surplus, thank you. Like, that's a good job to all the employees, to the department heads that are running the town. Because we're not here on a daily basis running it day to day. We're here twice a month and plus whatever we do, whatever we're working on, right? So I give the day to day to the town manager and the department heads, and hopefully everybody's into it to save a dollar. But I can't see that if we cut the schools now, any money, that next year that 991 will probably be 2.
right, and that's what I'm talking about when I say we want to be in the best position now to be able to absorb some of those rather large expenses coming down in the future. And I don't want to be like the other municipalities who are constantly struggling and making major cuts and really, really suffering, because right now we're not there. We're not at that point. We don't want to be at that point ever. But we also want to have the good things in life that are going to do better for the taxpayers and the students of the district and all of that. And we want to do what's right by our people. We just need to make sure that it's like anything else, and forgive the simple example, but if you're driving a car that's breaking down on you every other month, and next year I'm gonna need a new car, well, you probably better start cutting back now to get ready for that big expense. And that's an oversimplified example, but it does ring true that we need to be in a good position now to be able to continue a great partnership with our school department and the ones they serve.
And I think that's why I said, I have a tough time with cutting non-vacant positions, somebody's in it, right? And because there's a bumping process. And when it comes to the bumping process, sometimes, and we've seen it, not always the qualified person's doing their job, right? Because of the bumping process, it's nothing we can do about that. But when there's vacant jobs, vacant positions open, if we can do the work without the individual, without that, and doing more with less, which was a big quote. And the one thing I know I'm not allowed to say where I am at work. That's how we used to do, that's how we do it all the time, that's how we do it, that's how we did it. Well, we have to figure it out, and again, this is this year, and I'm sure we're gonna, as soon as the budget's over, we go into next year thinking, what are we gonna change? And I'm hoping that's the mentality here in the town hall and throughout the town, because again, every year it comes before us, and now it's on us, so. It's not, we sat up here numerous times as council people and said, well, got it down to where we think is good, let's let the voters vote on it. They vote on it, and you can say, voters voted. Well, you can't say anymore, it's the council vote.
Well,
So,
unless there's still the option, it's a super majority, which I think everybody here knows that we have to, there has to be at least four of us have to agree on it. If we don't, then we come up with two budgets and that would go to voters. I don't think everyone wants that to happen, but
yeah, I mean, I do want to go back and I am confident, because I know the work that has gone into this process. Mark, when did you start the budget process?
Krista and I started generally the end of October, November, and back and forth feedback with the department heads. They need to have their proposals to me before they walk out on Christmas Eve. And then usually during those holiday weeks is when I start going through and making notes, and then we sit down individually. To Mr. Reed's point, do I go in there and say, come in with X% down with various versions? No, and I don't want to say I don't ask them, because I don't want them to waste their time, but they're all been very fiscally responsible, and they mostly have all been here for a long time. So they understand the constraints that we have. And like the council president mentioned, a significant portion of that is stuff that's done through collective bargaining and is fixed. And I've always commented that, we can't save the amount of money we need to sometimes in paper clips and reams of paper. It's just not possible. So the significant savings needs to come through labor and the associated accounts when we need to make those type of cuts. So then it comes on me and Kristen and the department heads to listen to you all and tell me which services are, essentially we have to figure out which ones are the least important, and then try to figure out a way to have the least amount of impact, because I think the services that we provide are what the people and the taxpayers and residents and visitors and everybody expects. So to make significant cuts is going to directly impact some of those services. And I understand sometimes that is necessary and required. But to go back to something else that was said is, I think Chris and we know this is a comprehensive project. It's not a 1 year done and cross it off. As soon as this project's done, we're on to the next one. And we're also factoring in that every 3 years, we're going through collective bargaining. So we're constantly taking notes, and department heads are doing it on where they see things that could be done more efficiently, do more with less type of scenarios. And, we had a lot of years when the employees, for lack of a better word, were not really being taken care of. They were essentially doing more for less. And that's not a beneficial scenario when we look to attract and maintain a quality workforce to provide those services safely and efficiently that everybody expects. So it's definitely a balancing act. It's definitely a comprehensive effort that, it's not a 1 year and done. It's, multiple years and, a lot of strategy, if you will. So the end result is something that's acceptable.
do we have potential what the tax rate is gonna look like yet?
The new tax.
What's the question?
The tax rate, I mean, I don't know if you have an exact number yet, like a hard number, but
She has.
I have approximate, but of course, it's subject to change.
of course,
a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah, I just know.
Because Sal's still coming back with updates to the.
Could you
to
give
the
us,
assessment.
could you give us those?
I almost hate to put them out if they're not final.
All right. well,
I mean,
email them to me.
I feel
I mean,
comfortable.
I know they're not final, but. I just-
I've heard different dollar amounts, so.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, you might
I
have-
hate to confuse people. I mean, there will be a substantial decrease in the tax rate.
Oh, absolutely.
So we should make that clear.
What's-
Yeah, it's not gonna be,
What's
it's
the
not gonna
rate
be
right now?
1785.
Single family, for example,
Single family right now is 1869.
so we'll see several dollars at least. Okay, I mean, that's, because I've got calls from a lot of people that have their accounts like in an escrow,
Right.
and then they kind of already go up, and then I'm like, well, that's them assuming, but we don't, obviously,
Yeah.
like, we don't have a tax rate, so they can't have a tax rate. Okay.
Significantly.
So you'll have that number by when we do the vote in May?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind, that's a single family residential
No, I
number, so,
know.
so you hate to put one number out there, because then a commercial
No,
person.
I was gonna have it involved, but
Yeah.
we'll wait for that, that's fine.
Because I think
But
that,
it will go down several dollars for all. of us.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
it should.
So yeah, 1 second.
Well-
I know personally, when I saw my appraisal come in, I took the tax rate and I took what I think the new tax rate should be. And I fared okay without the tax increase. So,
What people don't realize too, when I've asked almost everybody, like everybody's just going up a significant amount, which means the tax rate's gonna come down that much more.
a lot of people start to understand that more, 'cause we've been, I know a lot of people have been explained that don't, because soon as the tax, the assessor bills came out, not the bills, the appraisals came out. If anybody follows social media, everybody says, how am I gonna pay these taxes? How am I gonna pay this? Because they didn't read that one little sentence. Do not use your current tax rate. When people start using the current tax rate, thinking they're going up 1,000, 2,000, 3,000.
Well, I mean, it is right, but I did this, I'm like,
I actually had a person call me, there's one up 40,000. I said, you're gonna be happy. They don't believe me. I said, okay, I bet a dinner on it. And I know I don't bet dinners too often. But their tax rate.
Market basket or a real dinner?
no, it's gonna be a real dinner because I know once the tax rate comes out, they're gonna probably see a $400 or $500 decrease. And they don't believe me, but I know it's gonna happen, so. Alan, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to, again, reinforce the idea that this process is a months-long process. I would suggest, and I did not poll them, that I bet there's not one department head in the room that got everything they asked for. I'm sure of that, as a matter of fact, so it is something that, I think they have spent a lot of time on and been responsible. So I guess kudos to all of you and to the town manager and Kristen, because I know they have worked really hard on this, so. I'm sorry, Alan.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's not.
Alan Plaza, 5 Robin Lane, and just a couple of comments with regard to methodology. I know you had 2 workshops for the council. You've had 2 for the public. And I just want to ask a question or make a recommendation. There are a lot of people in this town, either taxpayers, town employees, or businesses, who may, I'm a believer in zero-based budgeting, but may have an input. They see the day-to-day operations in this town, the problems, the good points, and they may have some input to you, to the budget. I would recommend that next year you modify that and accept public comment from them. You're gonna get some crazy ideas. You may get some fantastic ideas, but at least accept the public's input when you're going through this budget. As I said, there's a lot of ideas out there, and it wouldn't, ignoring them is not the way to go. One other question, if someone could clarify it, for late payments, what is the current percentage?
12%.
12%, that's what I thought, because I thought I heard 18.
It was
was.
18. back
It
in
was, and
2012.
we fought it, and I brought that to the attention and the council did it. I just wanted to make sure on that. And it is what it is.
Alan, just making my notes, you're suggesting accepting public input at the workshops.
At the workshops. At times we did, and I'll be honest, at times we did let the public speak at the workshops because to me, I always said if they took time out of their night to be here, but then we did put a stop to it because we couldn't get through it sometimes. So that was the toughest part,
That's the
so-
nature of the business.
I understand, but we were here some nights till 11 o'clock at night. I mean, but there was only 3 people in the crowd just standing here bringing up the same thing over
Well, that's when you can limit it. You can ask them for inputs, especially the businesses. And not just the department heads, but also the people who are out there day after day. I mean, in the Navy, we have captain suggestion boxes and sailors come up with some great ideas. I'm sure the West Warwick Police, Fire, and municipal employees would do the same thing. And with regard to perhaps giving some idea, maybe in the neighborhood of, as Mr. Messier suggested, I think waiting until the actual vote is just gonna increase the anxiety among the elderly, the other people. So maybe you can do that. I can't see the reason to hide it. You could put it in the neighborhood of something close and get it out there to the public. You know, there's nothing to hide, do it.
No, you're right, there is nothing to hide, Alan, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think you have an exact number. I mean,
It's dropping at least $4 and
Right.
20 some odd cents.
So it's in the 14.
it's gonna be
change.
under 15. It'll be under 15, under 15.
Under 15.
That's,
And
that's a safe.
And that's roughly where I think, I heard 4 different numbers, not even from Kristen, so
Right.
that's,
So,
fine.
so under
When you-
15 for
when you hear that.
single
they're all around
family,
that range.
residential, for
Correct.
single family. There'll
Uh-huh.
be different rates for commercial and multifamilies and
Yeah,
resident.
but
versus-
no, it does help to know that it's gonna be dropping at least $4.
So,
That makes a big difference.
Under
But-
15.
Yes.
And-
Because we get a lot, I mean, we get a lot of messages.
If you did the quick math, it's around 4, her number is 1450-ish, 50-ish. You know, don't hold us to the penny, please.
Right.
Until we have it solidified, because
Yeah.
there are appeals going on. Whether it goes up, down, left, right.
And it could
I
be.
think I'm the only one who
after-
appealed last time that went up. I don't
Must
appeal.
have been your charming, your charming.
No,
Yeah.
but
The other thing I would just like to get out there if I could, because, and I think, John, you said sins of the past. I'm gonna twist that a little bit. I don't think it's sins of the past. I think it's, we had problems back then where we couldn't give salary increases and we gave benefit increases. We knew that was gonna happen, whoever was sitting here knew that was gonna have an impact down the line, and we're now feeling that impact. And Kristen talked about the legacy pension being a big part of that. Well, we've sort of taken care of that too by getting out of that business and letting the state do it, and those benefits are far less. So it's not since, it's what we needed to do to survive back then.
and you look, you know, Alan, we talk about expenses, you're on the board in the state of Rhode Island, right?
You would believe it.
And you fought for ARC, you fought for the ARC to get back, right?
I fought for the ARC.
The COLA, I'm sorry, the
Just
COLA,
to-
I'm sorry.
Just to let you know, I looked at West Warwick, 11.7 million this year. The ARC, 12.146 next year.
Yeah.
And to keep you advised, my group is meeting routinely with the general treasurer to take RISA 2011, throw it out, and coming up with a good plan for the taxpayers and for the people in the system. I mean,
But when you fought for that COLA to come back, that also that comes back to us as an expense, added
Which is
expense.
right, but
it
it's,
is.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not arguing whether it's right or
I'm
wrong.
just pointing out so people, you know, what
Yeah.
I can elaborate. There were people in this pension system that have only their pensions, no social security.
Yes,
And they did
absolutely.
not have an increase
Correct.
since 2012. And David, I challenge you to live on your salary from 2012. That's part one. It will be changed. For example, the governor has proposed scooping the surplus from 2024. It was 42 point something. He wants to scoop 21.6. The person from the state budget office said, hey, it's only 50%. They changed the law. And I raised my hand, and prior to that, it was 100%. And tomorrow, the retirement board is voting on a resolution to send to the governor and every member of the General Assembly telling him you can't do that. It's only the third time in 30 years that has been done.
No,
And if you think I was bad here,
you should see me on the retirement board.
We never said that, Alan. We never said
I
that.
wanna thank, going forward, I wanna thank Sarah because, the retirement board passed a resolution going forward from the February meeting. Not only are they recording the meetings, they're archiving that, but that was done on a, policy change. Policies can be changed. I've introduced or via Rep Serpa to have that enshrined in general law, so they can't do it so easily. We are making progress up there so everybody can watch what goes on, and, I'm having fun there.
And again, Alan, I
And
know.
I'm sure they are too.
I know one area that I think you and I have agreed on in the past, and I've been guilty of it. My first 4 years in the council, I know they put, it was $2 million into the pension fund. right?
Crazy.
I think you stood up here and said, no. I'll even give it to Kelsey. Peter Kelsey said, give more. Well, we had an unfortunate station fire settlement. Where do we take the 500,000 to cover that yearly settlement? Out of the pension contribution, we cut it down to 1.5. That was in 2009-10. So, you
That's
know,
one of the benefits of being in the state plan. Now, we can't do
we
that.
can't do that. And one of the reasons why, and I give the kudos to Mary Beth that she worked as hard as she did, because one of our former town managers said, there's no way we're gonna get that done in 1 year's time. I need 3 years to get it done. Well, Mary Beth got elected and we got it done in a year. And I love the fact that I don't like the bill every year, don't get me wrong. But I love the fact that you take the politics out of the pension board, and I think the employees feel that much better too. And also, the people on the pension board, you talk to any of them, when they did things and they had to make cuts, do something, or they had a tough time. I've watched them get berated, so, and yelled at for certain things, and, you know, Jerry Tellier, you're joking with me the other night about it, he stood in the back, used to yell at me all the time, he goes, you never threw me out though, I said, because you were respectful about it, even though I understand, we were messing with livelihoods, you know, and then we got into a pension crisis, and yes, and you look around, it's every city in town, it's not just Westfield. It's just a lot more are coming out now, we just came out early, so ultimately, but going back to what Mr. Reed said earlier about, you know, police details and, you know, you look at police and fire, their revenues that they generate, they want to generate that revenue, you know, the ambulance runs and the police details. And as much revenue they generate and put it into that account, the fire chief never had to come up here and ask for an ambulance. This fire chief for another, the only thing they had to say is what account they take it out of, which was the rescue account, and it never went to the taxpayer. So we're consistently raising the money to pay for those ambulances, the police cars, you know, so we're not sitting here every budget saying we need 5 cars, put it in the budget. You know, when you hear the chiefs come up here and say, this is the line item, this is the line I want to take it out of, which is their revenue budget, that's a great thing. You know, they're trying to be self-reliant, you know, because if we took all that revenue and then spent it elsewhere, like say a 0% tax increase, and all of a sudden, police chief comes up, says, I need 5 cars because 5 are broken down, they're done. Or the fire chief comes up, says, I need an ambulance. What's an ambulance? Close to $1 million right now? 750, somewhere in there, maybe a little higher?
430.
430, okay. That's fully dressed?
No.
No,
Okay.
exactly.
That's just the truck.
That's just the truck. So fully dressed, it's probably about 7,
So
6. So
it's a lot.
and believe it or not, the amount of miles we put on an ambulance in this town is amazing. And one thing in this budget that really hasn't shined is the 3rd ambulance. That's for the public safety of this community. You know, the amount of runs, the chief gives us the amount of runs every year that we do, and the amount of strain and stress on employees, just constantly just running back and forth to Kent County Hospital, Rhode Island Hospital, mutual aid, so on and so forth. Hopefully that 3rd one's gonna bring in enough revenue to help pay for itself too. So hopefully, you know, that's the self-revenue thing has worked, and that's been through many councils throughout the years.
So Mark, or everyone, I guess, working off what Alan said, maybe that's something that just could be on the website, or there is some sort of drop box throughout the year, instead of waiting for a crunch time at the end, because then that could be very chaotic and almost unmanageable, to be honest with you. See if people have ideas, and you might get some crazy things, I'm aware of that, but if there's some way to do that, perhaps. And I also don't want anybody, the pension number will continue to grow for the next 20 years. I mean, that's the reality of it. That legacy pension number will continue to grow, so
Eventually it will come back down,
it will.
but
I think I'll be dead, but
Oh, sorry.
yes, yes.
you're still young.
Yeah, you are about money. Yeah.
And again, with the NIHOP report, I always compare it to the NIHOP report. We're even saving money right now, because NIHOP was looking about 14 million right now, according to their 25-year plan. So when we sit there and say 14 million versus 11, yes, it's a sucky bill that we get every year, but it's still $3 million cheaper than what NIHOP said or suggested that we put in. But like I said, the only thing about NIHOP versus the state is the state sends us the bill and we're responsible for paying it.
Well, hopefully things will change. Frank Karpinski will be leaving at the end of June. The new director hasn't come in yet, but my group has been meeting with General Treasurer Diosa, and I don't know what your feelings are on him. He was mayor of Central Falls, and what bothers him more than anything else was what they had to do with already established pensions for their people. And I talked to him, I said, you gotta do the right thing. He said, I wanna be able to sleep at night. He wants to do the right thing. My opinion of him has changed. I think he's a good guy. His staff is brilliant. They're working with us, so I'm not promising anything, but we're trying. We really are trying. And,
No, you and I had
They're
that,
listening to
you and
us.
I had that conversation about a month ago, you know, because your opinion at the microphone was totally different than what you were talking about that night, and, you know, it's amazing what you learn when you start working with somebody. It's, you know, it's very easy to sit here and say, do this, do that, but when you get to know the job and what they're doing, sometimes it changes your opinion.
and you're fortunate that I'm putting my energy into that, and I'm not here harassing you
You
guys.
still got us once in a while, you still get us once in a while, that's okay. Haven't thrown you out though, Alan, have I? Because you've always been respectful. You might have been heated, but respect.
So can we go back to Jason's list, just because I think we should address them?
Right.
He's not here, so we did the 12 to 15, has there been any, is there any sentiment about changing that and really what difference that might make?
It's really hard to quantify because there's so many different scenarios on how interest is charged.
Okay,
It's,
So at the end of the year, we have what we collected in interest, right?
mm-hmm,
Should we put out like a percentage onto that? So
we did.
like, I know you quantified it as far as, like, so if we went, let's just say the last 5 years average, minus 100,000, let's minus 100. Take the last 5 years of late fees
Mm-hmm.
and change it from 12% to 15%. So add 3% to that, really, right? And that
what
should
am I
be,
adding it to? Because there's so many, if you pay late in April, the interest is going back to July.
no, I get that.
You know what I mean?
So at the end of the year, you know
Yeah.
how much you collected in late interest, correct?
Yeah,
So at the end of and I get it, there's variables. If I pay late in April or July or whatever, December, I get that. But at the end of the year, for the last 3 years, we have a dollar amount what we've collected in
I
late.
have that right here.
And if all three are roughly the same, let's add 3% to that, say we're gonna move it up to 15, that should give us a benchmark. Now, where
Can.
if you can,
Yes.
and then
resolution.
secondly, if that lights a fire under people to pay their taxes on time, it should wash in this end because our collection rate should go even higher, correct? So if they pay it in late fee or no late fee, it should
It's
on
a
both
big-
sides, it should be,
It might be a big jump, but.
you might see
Yeah.
a 0.2%.
Yeah.
It has It could have a reverse effect, exactly, but
You have something.
we have to be
say.
creative.
Well, I just think with that, I think we can still consider that and make a change, but do it outside
Of
of
the
this,
budget.
of this budget process. It's gonna require, at the very least, in my opinion, an ordinance to do it, to make the change.
Okay,
So I think, you know, if it helps us along the way and the logic makes sense, then we can move that forward, but
Okay.
as far as part of this, I don't think we
too
can
complicated,
adequately
right.
put a number
Right.
in that's gonna feel good or make sense, plus or minus
But I think,
in a revenue column.
you know, based off of what Jay and his notes here, and I'm probably speaking for him a little bit here and for me, is at the end of the year, great, surpluses are great. I don't disagree. I'm glad we're in the black and not the red. Any business wants to be, any company, everybody wants to be in the black. But in the town aspect, when we're so far in the black, 1 million, 2 million, at that point, I asked, did we overtax the resident?
I think it's the revenues that really have been driving our surpluses and, you know, it's hard. The economy, I like to be conservative because revenues can, you know, provide a great surplus. They can also send you right into a deficit. You can be right on target with your expenses, and if your revenues are too, you know, crazy, then you end up still in a deficit. So I'm very conservative, you know, this economy of the building and the selling and has gone on, you know, longer. There's ebbs and flows and it's gone on longer than I thought, so. That's why I'm willing to kind of be a little less conservative with some of the, you know, the building, the town clerk, the finance revenues. But that really has been the driving force to our revenues, to our surpluses, has been the revenues and our collection rate.
In our surplus, it's, you're right. If you can get to break even rate, when it's not that long ago, we had $37,000 in surplus or something like that.
It was zero when I got here. It was absolutely.
when was
because I
that?
had capital.
When was that?
in it. I came here November of 2017.
So it was zero then.
It was zero.
And I think our surplus at the end, after the audit is 7.3 million. Is that somewhere in that neighborhood?
Correct.
And that's wonderful. It's not what we should have. I know by charter it's okay.
Yeah.
However, if you look at the report that the Mike DiPiassi does and where we fall in relation to other cities and towns, we do not have enough in surplus. When we talk about the school looking at a $5 million deficit this year until they cut 3 and still needing some, so $7.3 million does not last very long.
When was that disaster wave?
That's one bridge on Greenbush. It's one, I mean, it's just, so I don't want to, I think it's wonderful that we've made the progress we have in the 8 years, but that's less than $1 million a year. And again, you can wipe it out very quickly. So I think you just need to be careful, which is why I am never in favor of taking anything and putting a line item in a budget that says use of fund balance. I'm just, that's not, but that's the recovering accountant once again, so.
Yeah, at least the numbers, I mean, with the 150 added to revenue, and then if you printed the 97.7%, you said that would bring us to 1.5%, correct?
1.7.
What is that? 1.75, sorry, that's what I have written down as 1.75%. Sorry, 1.75.
Yeah.
So,
When you were trying to get your email, you were trying to get it down to below 2, correct?
well, I think my
I did.
comments at the end were, I don't feel this budget would pass over 2%.
And I don't think anybody wants to see that, but again, I just want to, because Jason's not here, can we just go through those? I mean, the Saturday bulk pickup, changing one to work day, does the contract call for 2?
That one, I believe, would require negotiation, which I sent a letter to Council 94 to engage that. We have an RFP out now for the solid waste recycling billing, and part of collecting that information. I think it's worthy of a discussion on the best practice moving
Okay.
forward. Again, that's not something we can count on.
There's a court judgment on that.
It's an arbitration ruling, and
Yeah.
because there were changes made without negotiation, apparently. So, you know, we want to be responsible and respectful of that. So that's a process that I think that's going to go beyond the setting of this
This
budget.
budget, right? Using surplus, I mean, that's my opinion, and everyone else is entitled to theirs, but I would never, I don't think you want to dip into surplus to balance a budget, to be honest with you. And the last thing was the school department, and I've already voiced my opinion there that I think we would be cutting our nose to spite our face to actually cut that number. I believe they need it, and I think you said they are the future. The students are the future of the town, so. But I don't know if others want to comment on that. I just felt it was important to address Jay's points. Are there any vacant positions currently? There's just one, right?
There's just one that I froze in this, for this process.
It's already not in the budget.
Correct.
And that's the only vacant position currently.
Right, like I mentioned today, there's one in wastewater, which is obviously a different budget.
Yeah.
That is out for bid internally now, and will likely be filled within the next couple of days.
Right.
Any other comment from the council? Any more public comment on the budget?
Want to recap that?
So I don't think you voted on
So I'm
the
gonna
collection
make-
rate.
I'm gonna make a motion that we change the collection rate to 97.7,
Second,
7.7.
which would give a tax rate of 175 and a levy rate of 3.08. Sorry, Kristen.
I'm gonna go to 150, right?
So I have a second?
What was this question? Just question?
No, he
I
went.
forgot, we usually vote on the 150.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did.
So long ago.
It was.
So I have a motion for 97.7 collection rate.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And then from Kristen and my perspective, once you're done with your deliberations or thoughts and processes, if tonight concludes the hearings, we ask for a vote for the provisional budget based on the information we have now. So Kristen can move forward with supplying the required information to the Division of Municipal Finance and the proper advertising, so we be prepared to formally vote on the budget at the May 8th tentative, well, not tentative, May 8th meeting.
And we've had many discussions, and I apologize. Can you explain to me again why we can't vote on the budget next town council meeting?
Well,
We wouldn't, because I have to now do my ad for the Department of Municipal Finance. It has to be advertised 10 days before that final public hearing, which would be the vote on the final budget. So tomorrow, if I get the blessing to move forward, I would get everything ready for Department of Municipal Finance, get it to them, hoping I can get an approval by Friday. If not, I'll have my laptop with me next week, but I will get that over to the paper, and then, I mean, it would never make it for the 22nd. It would not be advertised 10 days prior to May 8th. I mean, to April 22nd. Yeah,
Okay,
it's just not.
okay, all right, I just wanted to, yeah.
Because we still have to do that process. It's
Cumbersome.
So what you're looking for is a preliminary vote?
It's called, yeah, I think we want to call it a
Non-binding
provisional
And
vote
that,
to.
does that mean nothing can be
No.
changed? No, but we can still, something could be changed up until that night,
Well, I
correct?
mean, we probably wouldn't do changes, but it's up for vote, is what you're saying at that point in time.
Right, the final vote on May 8th.
Right.
Wait, would you, not vote now?
No, a vote.
Okay, I'm like,
It's just a provisional vote,
The
just to say
provisional-
that you guys are comfortable enough with us to move forward with the DMF, the Department of Municipal Finance.
Based on the numbers that we talked about.
Correct.
Right.
Based on 1.7.
no, that's what I mean, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, we're giving you, like, right now, we're giving you the go ahead and do that.
Yes.
Okay. We're doing a vote for that, or?
I mean, I think,
Can we vote? It's not on
Yeah, probably not.
the agenda, like a provisional vote is a vote, let's face it. So it's
Well, you
really,
guys took votes throughout the night.
that is true on the changes, on the budget changes.
Any others? What have we done in the past?
So this is different.
no,
Yeah. I mean,
Well, honestly,
No,
no. So
no,
on the
no.
second public hearing, yeah, you did take a vote, that the budget was,
So in essence,
Our
on
changes had
eight, we'd
stopped.
be acting as the public going up to the civic center.
for the
to vote.
financial town meeting, correct?
I see, okay,
Yes.
yes, all right.
How does, so the supermajority only applies to that vote?
Well, no, now it's 3-1 because there's 4 of us here, correct?
Well, that's what I mean.
I mean,
This
I also,
this could be a
Supermajority
simple
for the-
majority, which is the same, by the way, with 4 of us here.
no, they're the same, but would be 4 or 5 when we have the full.
Right.
Well, May 8th, I would expect all 5 of us to be here.
Well, that's why we chose that date, right?
Yes.
At 5:30.
Yes.
Well, then I guess I would make a motion that, ask Kristen to do the legwork she needs to do to get this budget in order for us to vote on it on the 8th of May.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
I just don't, our work isn't done.
What more work?
I think there's still some cuts to be made.
Can you suggest them?
They would have to be suggested tonight, or we're gonna have to go to a
Yes.
third public hearing.
Because she needs to have the numbers to do that process. So if you have suggestions.
I have
please do.
suggestions that I am not, again, I'm not a department head, I'm not the town manager. There have been almost no cuts suggested to staffing. And not filling an open position is not a cut.
Let's do it this way. As the town manager, do you have recommendations to make those cuts? Or are you presenting as you see?
Based on what has been supplied by the department heads and our numerous meetings and discussions over the last few months, in order to provide the services that have been expected, I feel our staffing level is appropriate at this time. So other than freezing the one vacant position, I don't feel that it would be responsible to cut any positions at this time.
So you feel we've reached full maximum efficiency?
I don't think we'll ever reach full maximum efficiency, but
Okay.
we're all willing to work towards that with an understanding that some of those require collective bargaining. And, you know, like I said before, there's gonna be some sacrifices needed. So,
So I think one of the questions I asked this morning, Mark did give an answer back. And to all of us, we did get it. In a vacant position, I get what you're saying, it's not a cut, but it is a cut, 'cause if you don't fill it, then you don't have to pay for it.
Correct. It's not
So-
like-
Right, but we're looking at numbers right now that already don't include that position.
Correct.
Correct. So now, and I'll be frank, somebody from DPW or somebody from the town hall decides they go on the sewer department. And I don't know who applied for that position. I don't know, you know, that'd be an HR question. But
Well,
do we, because the one thing I think I said at the beginning of this budget was if we have any vacant positions internally, if we want to move people around and fill those positions to be filled per se, so like right now, the sewer department, if somebody comes out of a department and and the manager could see fit of not backfilling that position right now, we do have to go back to the union and talk to them about it. So that's one thing that was brought up in one of the answers.
so within the contract, we can't eliminate positions if they're filled?
Correct.
How does that work? I mean, every other company in the world, every other municipality in the world it's part of a union contract. If positions are no longer viable.
I think we can make changes to fiscal reasons.
Right.
How, and with certain jobs in bargaining units, it's easier than others.
Right.
In public safety, for example, you know, there's minimum manning requirements and
Right.
the changes would involve negotiations. And the vacancies end up at the bottom, which is where you
So-
need people. So they'd have to be organizational proposals, changes, negotiations.
My resistance to doing this by attrition is that we're not maximizing the benefit to the taxpayer in terms of lowering the taxes. All we're doing is inflating, I don't want to say inflating or padding, but we're increasing a potential surplus at that point. So we've already billed the taxpayers, for instance. And now somebody's leaving one position to go fill another, so maybe we can eliminate that position. We've already billed the taxpayers. We're not gaining anything on that.
So in one respect, I say, yes, that makes sense. However, I haven't heard a suggestion on which services you'd like to adversely affect and suggest that I look to eliminate a position or
I would
positions.
suggest you look towards DPW. And it's not eliminating services. It's about making efficient use of the resources we have.
And I think that would be
That's a management issue in
Would
my
be-
opinion, yeah.
debatable and requires some research because, generally there aren't people sitting, waiting for something to do. There are assignments, there's requirements for snow
I-
plowing, all hands on deck.
Absolutely.
We can
And,
grab
one-offs as
vendors,
far
but-
as storms and whatnot, that's not predictable. We have to account for that. But I would respectfully push back on that last statement that there are people with their time full. We've talked about it. We've talked about it here. We've talked about it outside of here. We've talked about it.
And Mark, I brought up a position at the very beginning of this budget hearing.
And the
Right.
pushback is why I was hesitant.
No, and
Saying this on
listen,
record.
and I'm gonna be honest with you. Yes, every business has that 10% of the employee who works harder not to work than to work. Unfortunately, you can cut those positions right now. You can cut 5 positions out of DPW. Look at the bottom of the list. Those are up and shining stars that actually came from other companies to come work here. And
I
guess who
understand.
stays?
I understand that.
That probably that 10% that is working hard not to work.
I understand that.
Okay, and I'm not saying, and that's in
then
every
at that
company
point,
and
it
every
does
business.
become a
I
management
don't
issue.
care if it's, huh?
But then at that point, it does become a management issue.
It's probably something that needs to be addressed now. I think I think somebody came up here, wait a minute, somebody came up here last meeting and talked about drivers not getting out of the truck and,
We don't
Staying
have
in-
drivers anymore.
well, whatever, people not getting out of the truck.
Yeah.
Well, we negotiated that they are no longer drivers,
Right.
they're laborers / whatever,
Crew person,
crew person.
yeah.
Okay? And yes, we have so many employees and we have a assistant and a director and a director of DPW. I put that on them to manage and keep an eye on it. Can they be everywhere at the time? No, because they're up here with HR, they're over there with this one, they're over here with that one. They can't keep an eye on every employee. Nobody can. But unfortunately, I think.
So you think the staffing is right where it needs to be?
So here's what I think, and I'm gonna be blunt. I think if people learn how to coach discipline, you get rid of the right people. It's the wrong way to say it, but
No, I
you
agree.
get rid
I
of the
agree with that
right
as well.
people.
I do.
And unfortunately, and I'm very guilty of this,
But-
and I'll be the first one to say this. I'm guilty of this when we talk about cutting positions. I ask a particular employee who I know has the list in their desk. And I can give you the names who are gonna get cut if you cut 3 positions on there. And I would say it'd be crazy.
What everything you said is 100% true, but unfortunately, we are now past that point. Now we are forced with a difficult decision that's gonna unjustly affect certain members. But that's where we are. That's just the truth of it. So you asked for suggestions on where
No,
I would
I
cut,
get
and I
it,
gave it to
but
you.
I just wanna point out that if there's an issue with employees not working or not doing the right thing, I think that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
And again, I don't know what situations are going on, you know, I've heard different things, I always hear things, you hear things, everybody hears things, right? That's on management.
Yeah.
That's on Mark, that's on the department heads.
Right.
Okay? I think I put in here, I hear we're doing more with less already in my email.
Mhm.
You know, but again, if you've got attendance issues, you got whatever, we gotta address them. Because unfortunately, there is a little expense here with those employees. I think she said it's about $80,000 up an employee. Well, if you wanna get down to that 1%, you're gonna probably have to cut 3 employees somewhere along this line.
Well, again, I'm not about the number, I'm about maximizing what we can do for the taxpayer. If we get to the point where I'm satisfied that we've done everything we can do and that number is a 2.5, then that's what it is. I know it's not gonna be a 2.5, but you know, and Jason's not here, I can't speak for him. But I can tell you, if you wanna have the vote, we'll have the vote. We can have the vote. But come the next vote, I can tell you it's gonna be tough if it stays the way it is now. So we can either get to that point and then look for a second version of this budget, or we can just do it now and get it over with quicker. And then eventually, if it goes to the people, the taxpayers, the voters, they choose between the two. Kind of where I'm at. And again, I wanna say this, I believe the school department has gone above and beyond, not only this year with their cuts, but what they've done over the last half dozen years to keep themselves self-sufficient and standing on their own without coming to the town for too much. That's appreciated, that's noted. I think based on what I saw up there, they've gone through and done enough on their end. I just don't know that on the town side, even though it's a very small margin, I still think there's a little bit that we can do. That's where I'm at.
Any other discussion?
Well, what-
I mean, I don't know if it's a discussion. I feel like if we don't have a solid feeling that there's gonna be a supermajority agreement on May 8th, then we shouldn't leave until we do.
Well, it's been kind of said that we won't have a supermajority come.
I can only speak for myself. I can only assume what's gonna happen to my left.
So
Well,
from
you know
my
where I
perspective, I'd say, you know,
And you know what I
in years
said?
past, we've gone through this. You pick a line and say, I want this reduced
And, you
by,
know, that's, I agree with that, but I've had
$200,000,
discussions and,
you get a majority vote.
but I don't think that's necessarily the role of the councilors.
Let me ask you something. Let's say there's not a supermajority on the 8th, like, what's the process? I mean, hopefully there is.
Then
If
Mark would
there's
have
not,
to-
what's the process first? First, we have to go through the whole process again? We
Mark
gotta-
would propose a second.
No, my interpretation
No,
is
that's not
that
how
I read the group and come back with a revised.
Right, but
budget.
is there a whole separate thing? We have to do 2 more hearings with the two,
No.
like, how does that work out? I don't know. all
That
that.
wasn't outlined in the,
Not, yeah, it's not outlined in the charter. I think you could just go to the second vote.
Like the next.
I mean, I would,
meeting or-
I,
Or
again,
that
my
night, like,
interpretation would be, that would essentially be another hearing.
On the 8th, you mean?
No, on whatever date would be decided after if I needed to produce
Secondary
a
budget.
second budget. Whatever date would be, essentially, that would essentially be a hearing to discuss, get input, and potentially vote on.
but once,
Which then would, from there, we would have to work on the ad, submit it to DMF and advertise for 10 days and pick another day for the supermajority vote.
for the record, please understand where I'm coming from with this. Again, we have a huge ask from the school department potentially coming our way. We are not in the position to accept that right now, in my opinion. I mean, there's a lot more to be discussed and discovered and all that. But from the people I talk to, and I'm trying to get some good feedback from my constituents, there's not a huge appetite for that. And the way we can make that more palatable is to make sure we are on sound financial ground and make sure that everybody knows that we are running as clean and lean as possible when that time comes. That's not going to be an easy ask. And if we do say a 175 now, and then next year it's another 2.5, what are we gonna do when that bond hits?
Well, again, the voters will decide if the bond happens or not. So that's up to the voters.
It's up to the 140 people that show up and always say yes.
Oh, that's not always true.
Oh, I think this is gonna be well advertised.
Dave, well advertised. This is
I
probably
get it,
No, no, but
but
this-
we're,
one of the most
I'm
well
also asking,
attended.
making sure that
Well,
it's
this
not on
wouldn't
a
be-
holiday week or whatever, that we have discussed all
To be
this.
clear, it wouldn't be a yes or no
And you
this year.
wouldn't
It would
believe
be a-
people
No, no,
that
no,
say
I-
they have no idea.
Yes, on the budget, and so
It would be,
Mark's talking about the
Future.
future acts in the future,
Yeah.
if the school building committee.
like the bond.
And
And
best
bond.
positioning ourselves to take that on.
Mark, I'll be honest, like, I know that that school building committee is very dedicated. We're even getting to the frustrating point. I know I lost a little bit of my temper the other night with the company in asking, where do we stand? Because, you know, we talk about the bills, we talk about where we are, and we question their numbers. You know, they're saying 5 million here, 40 million there, and we're like, what? And we're fighting back, and so even during that, you know, we have pushed back and said, do we need a $60 million bond? Do we need an 80? Do we need a 20? You know, we're pushing back.
It's what can we afford?
I guess
What
my
can
point
we
Not what
is,
we need.
in
Yeah.
2 or 3 years, what do we do? If we just don't have the room to afford all of it, that's under mandate. What do? Then we go to the General Assembly and ask, like other municipalities are doing now, ask for an increase in the tax levy to 6% or 8%. We don't want to be in that position.
I don't think you get the support to bring it to the general assembly,
think
right
so.
here in this council right now.
But if we're not left with a choice, we have to pay the bills.
Mhm.
And if we don't have the ability to pay those bills under that, whatever those numbers are, a year or 2 or 3 down the road, then what do we have to do? Like it or not, we're gonna have to go to the General Assembly and put ourselves in the position of a Providence or a Coventry or a Warwick. And I don't wanna do that. I want these school projects. I want these school projects because they're what's best for the town, but we can't do that if we're not putting ourselves in the best position leading up to those. That's where this is coming from. That's where I'm coming from.
And I hear what you're saying. I'm not convinced. Again, we don't run the town on a day-to-day basis. I believe some of the things you're talking about are indeed management issues. Negotiations were long and hard about changing from a driver laborer to crew person.
And that was
And,
some progress.
yeah, and if it's not being adhered to, there is or should be a progressive discipline process that happens. And if that results in people not being here anymore, that's the way to handle it. In my opinion, simply saying cut 3 people or 4 people or whatever from DPW, I'm not sure that that's productive. And yes, if a school bond project is approved, there'll be a couple of years at least of 4% tax increases. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt
But
about
what
that.
happens when we can't pay all those bills under just a 4% tax increase?
I wouldn't vote for, as a person on the school building committee, I wouldn't vote to put it forward if we can't afford it. And that's the conversation we're having at this point in time. If it has to be a reduced project, it has to be a reduced project. I mean, when we started the process a year ago, year and a half ago now, we were not under the same conditions. We didn't have all the numbers as far as unfunded mandates that we have, the transportation issues, the out of district costs, the DCYF costs. Those were unknown to us. So,
Those
it
are
may
only
be-
going to increase, by the way.
But, and it may be that we have to reduce what we can only afford what we can afford. And I would certainly never recommend that we suggest to the taxpayers that we borrow more money than we can afford to pay. And Does that sound familiar? Do I say that at every single school building committee? It's not what the tax increase will allow is what we can afford. I mean, so, I'm just not convinced that cutting simply sitting here and saying cut three, jobs at DPW is the answer. I'm not comfortable with that, but,
Well, again, I was asked for
yeah,
a direct.
well, and I think that's what this process is.
Jeff, give us your thoughts. I know last year you came up here and you offered two positions right away that weren't filled and you gave them up. It was about 243 positions, 245,000. So we did reduce DPW by 3
Last year.
positions last year. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, probably not the best time to do this because I'm a little angry right now. But I think there's ways to save money. I'm not gonna stand up here and bash any of the guys. Like you guys said, myself and the assistant can't be everywhere at once. I don't have eyes in the back of my head. The union certainly has more rights than I do as management. That's the way the contract was done. There's nothing I can do about that. And you talk about progressive discipline, that's fine. But if I don't have the backing of everybody sitting up here, it's pointless.
Wait, Jeff, I'm gonna stop you right there. We do not run this town on a daily
Didn't
basis.
say you did, but they call you guys all the
wait a
time.
minute, Wait, wait, a minute. Before you sit there and say that, you write somebody up.
Yep.
That's between you and HR, not Dave, because I'll tell you, I am a proponent of an HR person. I
Yeah,
was one of the big proponents, me and Councilman Giroux wanted HR, because you know why, before that, previous town managers, not this town manager, previous town managers, it was Monty Hall in his office, let's make a deal.
mhm.
And I didn't, people used to come to us and say, can you save my job? Can you do this? And you know what? If we didn't save their job, they wanted to fight us at the local bar. You know, you just talked
We
about
could just
being mad.
direct the
Yeah,
I just
conversation
wanna
back.
point out
Yeah.
that you cannot sit there and say that we have to back you. We backed you with a contract that you have to follow. That's what our backing was.
Yep.
So I want to move back to just the question was, I think, what are your thoughts on staffing levels?
If
Just answer that.
Yes,
Well, we had 3 positions last year, the year before were taken that weren't filled and hadn't been filled in 5 years. We discussed that, yes. Do I think the staffing level is okay? It's adequate right now. But I do think there's ways to save money. But I think that's a conversation that needs to be had with the town manager, myself, the assistant, and go from there. I think that's a conversation that needs to be had for sure. I mean, there's ways to do it. We've discussed it in the past and it just, it hasn't come to fruition yet. I just think we need to have another discussion about
And
it.
again, you have a contract that you work by. Right?
Yep,
And we as a council supported that contract.
and I also believe that that's a conversation for another time because,
oh, it is clear, Jeff did not get everything he wanted in the contract.
No.
There's no doubt about that,
No.
but that's
And-
the
and-
reality of,
and-
that's
and
the
I- and I
reality of
didn't-
negotiations, Jeff.
I didn't mean to offend you when I said that, and I apologize
Well,
because
you did because you said we'd have to back.
It
you.
was-
We don't deal with daily
it
discipline.
was said the wrong way, and I do apologize for that. So I didn't mean that in a negative sense in any way, shape or form. So I do apologize for that. But, yeah, the contract, we have a contract that we have to follow. You're absolutely correct. Sometimes are we lenient with it? Yep. Not gonna say we're not, on both sides. You know, we, on both sides. I think if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it correctly, then yes, everything needs to be held to the letter, but again, you have to understand the fact that myself and Kevin, we can't be everywhere at once, like you said that earlier, we can't be. We get phone calls, we get messages, we get everything, you know, and if we don't see the employee not doing what they're supposed to be doing personally, and we're taking a third party, I can't sit there and in my opinion, I can't sit there and discipline that employee for something a guy said down the street. Because I didn't see it. It's his word against his word. or, so how do you sit there and discipline an employee for something that you didn't see them do? You know, unless it was caught on video, blatant, whatever the case may be.
Again, that, in my opinion, that's something that's a management issue, that's something that's disciplinary, that's something we work with HR and conduct investigations and try to handle things appropriately, whether they're unsubstantiated or substantiated with proper counseling, retraining, discipline, whatever is appropriate. Again, I think that we're shifting off of where we need to be
Right.
and talk about dollar signs.
Could you get your job done with 3 less people? Could you provide the services that you're expected to provide with 3 less people?
Well, it depends on what service you, in the wintertime, no. And I'll tell you why. We're not getting the vendors that we used to get because, as David can attest to, insurance is almost impossible for a lot of our vendors. I can't count how many people came to us said this year, I can't do it because I can't get insurance. So as of right now, we have 16 plow routes. So in essence, I need 16 people to put in those plow routes, plus vendors, because some of our plow routes are pretty good size, so we need those vendors. Last year, we had 3 vendors that we could count on with 1 truck, and sometimes we get an extra 2 from a certain vendor. Can't count on that.
I want to say this in, you know, in a little bit of defense here also. The last 3 to 4 years especially, I'm gonna say DPW has gotten a lot done that I've never seen before. We had, I know there was work orders sitting in a pile for over a year to get like a drain cleaned or whatever. It gets done in a reasonable time. And that group does, I'll say Jeff and group get it done. Where I know previous directors didn't get done.
I'm gonna just say, yeah,
Sidewalks got done. I see a lot of sidewalks getting done. I see a lot of more construction getting done that never got done before. I see Parks and Rec not getting complaints of high weeds under the bleachers and, you know, guys making sure they're getting overtimes to weed whack the field instead of doing it on normal time. I see a lot more getting done than what got done years ago. I will say it is running much better and it does have less people. Now, I personally say, okay, you can cut 3 positions, but at the end of the day, when you're saying, okay, we might not do sidewalks this year, we might not do this, and the bumping process is another whole process. You know, and that's neither here nor there, and I know I shouldn't look at the bumping process, but I do, because some of those young kids that just come here, employed, they save us money on the pension aspect of it. They are actually going to probably be long-term employees here. So to see them walk out that door, we might lose some good employees. And, you know, you gotta look at it, and that's why I said, if you have a discipline problem or an employee problem, let's work on the problem first. And I know it's not gonna be enough to get you through this budget, but you work through that problem, come next budget, it says, or throughout the year, saying, we're not gonna fill this position. We're set for next budget. So, I get it, both aspects of it.
Right, and we could sit here all night and lay all our cards on the table. We don't need to do that. We don't, it's still coming down to dollars.
well, you're right, but what you know, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna defend, the crew at DPW because, like David said, a lot has gotten done, and the quality of work, I don't think anybody can sit here and deny the quality of work that the DPW guys are doing, or the Parks and Rec guys, because the quality of work has been top notch. We hear it from the residents, we hear it from everybody, even you guys tell us all the time, everything is great. So I am gonna defend the fact that the guys, when they're doing their job, they bust their rear ends and they get the job done. And it's hard sometimes, it's hard, you know, you have different variables, different things going on, but the guys the quality of work and the quantity of work has been, top notch. Obviously, if you cut positions, then the amount of work is gonna go down. It's not, I'll never let quality sacrifice anything. Is the amount of work? Yeah, you know, like David had mentioned, you know, you might not get, you know, 20 sidewalks done this year, you may only get 5 done this year. So there's always gonna be a problem with cutting positions, there's always gonna be that, well, we're not gonna get as much done as we used to. And the big concern would be the winter time, honestly. You guys know that as well as I do, because there's, people are very passionate about having their roads plowed.
How, well, when you say that wintertime, when's most of our employees take their vacation time or their sick time or whatever? It's probably during the warmer months, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, that is
I mean,
correct, yeah.
so that's the tough part. You know,
We, you know,
they're out and you're gonna have people doing work. If you got 3 guys out, you're down 3 anyway. They're getting paid vacation or sick time, but
the only thing with that is we can, obviously, as management, we reserve the right to tell you, hey, we're only letting 2 guys off this week because of this situation, whatever the case may be. We do reserve that right, you know, all the variables come into effect and all that too, so.
you might approve it, but I can call out sick tomorrow.
I wasn't gonna say that, but yes, you are correct.
I deal with it.
You are correct, I wasn't gonna say that, but that's right.
Again, there's avenues to address that as well.
No, you just hit one.
You can,
Depends what the attendance policy is.
exactly. And where they stand, if they have time left or not, well, that's a different story. We're getting way deep into the weeds here.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, before you leave.
Yes, sir.
I was asked to stick my neck out and I did.
Mhm.
You're telling me right now you need all the employees you have. I'm not asking you if you can afford to cut 1, 2, 3, 10, whatever. You need all your employees.
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
Any other questions for Jeff?
Nope.
Thank you for coming up, Jeff. Sorry to lose a little cool with you, but
I understand.
It went both ways.
I'm seeing Dave, that's not Dave losing his school.
You've never
Maybe in 2025.
Again, these are tough times. I get it.
Mhm.
You know, this is, I think your 3rd budget, second budget.
Second.
Second budget. You know, it's difficult. Like I said last time, I know we all sat in the school audience.
Mhm.
We saw everybody up on stage, their faces, the people that were there, their faces, you know,
Now it's our turn.
that's it, right? And I get it, but I walked around this town hall because I did have suggestions brought to me. And I look and I'm like, there's only 2 offices that have more than 1 person in the office in here, and it's Sarah's office. In the finance office. That's it. You know, but then you have the collection side and the other side, and the 2 different, both the collection side and the finance side, so. When you look down there at the multiple employees, half is reporting to 1 person, half's reporting to the other, so. You have to look and say, okay, who's down there? And the same thing. They're not here, they're out sick, they're on vacation. Is the office shut down? Because we're down to 1,
No.
hence why we have a floater, you know, that was one of the reasons, and I brought that position up before. But now that I see that the offices are usually never closed and people can come in here 8 to 4 or 8 to 4:30, 8:30 to 4:30, I'm sorry. And be able to conduct business and not have to walk in here and say, oh, the office is closed, I gotta come back later. You know, I even talked to Mark about that. Oh, do we put on there that town hall's closed between 12 and 1 and everybody goes on lunch at the same time? And then we reopen at 2 o'clock?
Oh, no, not this one.
You know, some people are doing that.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and
But-
again,
How do you do?
that wasn't anything that I was looking for.
No, I'm just saying, like, and then I look. And I made a mistake this first budget meeting. Because. A council person came to me and talked to me about an individual. And I looked at that position and I'm like. You know what, if that individual or individuals have time to go spend doing things that not work related, then we could probably cut that position. As I went deeper in, I sat down, or I had a conversation with Chief Levine, and I spoke to him about the maintenance guy there, the maintenance guy here, and he told me that the maintenance guy at the police department has to do so much, sometimes get called in on weekends, because if there's blood, urine, whatever in the jail cells, that he has to clean it. So after talking to him, I've changed my mind. I've said, you know what, and same thing with the floating position. As long as, and this is all I ask, and I ask this from any employee, works for me or here or anywhere, give me an honest 37 or 40 hours a week, and that's all I'm asking. That's it, you know, and I told you, there are some employees, no matter what business it is, there's always that 10%. You know what? That's a management.
Right, but as I
Decision.
mentioned, that ship has sailed. That is not part of our dilemma in front of us today. There's nothing we can do between now and May 8th that's gonna resolve that situation, so we have to resolve it in the only way necessary, or the only way we can, I should say.
But I wanna resolve that issue, kind of what I said earlier, is we have a lot of good employees out there. Oh, absolutely. And I don't want that 10% to ruin for those individuals. I think we deal with that 10% on a management level and deal with it correctly. And let HR and the department heads deal with that. And that could be any department here, by the way. It's not just, and keep talking, it could be any department.
You know, I don't wanna look like I'm just targeting particular positions or people. But just based on knowledge or things that have been told to me by some very reliable in-house sources, that's what I came up with.
Any other comment?
That's fair. I mean, I'm just not a fan of cutting for the sake of cutting. If I have to take we're not here day to day. I have to take the department head and the town manager's word that they're doing the best. I would always encourage them. We should always try to become more efficient. We always can be. No one's as efficient as, and I know I'm certainly not, that's for sure. So cutting to say we cut because the schools did, or I'm not, that doesn't sit well with me. If the director thinks he needs the people, but I would say that it's fair notice that it's being looked at, and you need to make sure that we are working to be more efficient. And I agree, progressive discipline does need to happen, period.
That goes without saying.
Yeah, well, it doesn't necessarily always happen, so, yeah. So now it's been said officially.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, where does that leave us?
Any other comments?
Well, I don't know.
Any other cuts? Suggestions?
We were at the point where we were voting to have, that we're confident with the budget we have for the May 8th vote that I send, and we pay for an ad, and I do my due diligence with DMF.
I'm gonna make a motion to move forward the budget that we have before us.
Sorry, Jake. What?
To make a motion for the budget we have before us with the amendments we made tonight, which was the adding the 150,000 in revenues and the collection rate of 97.7%, which would bring us down to 1.75%. That's correct, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
I think we're going in the right direction. Could there be more work? I'm not 100% sure.
Well, we should do it now. I mean, now's the time to do it.
There's only,
These two meetings are for that.
yeah, well, there's only a couple ways that you can do it. And unless a department head has positions available that they think they can do without. But again, if I'm correct, just correct me if I'm wrong, I know it's for budgetary reasons, but there will be some sort of grievance or whatever.
I would anticipate there'd be obviously a reaction, whether it rises to a grievance level. I mean, obviously, we like to be inclusive when we can to get feedback, and that's a lot of what the collective bargaining sessions were about, with an understanding that we're not a bottomless pit where we understand we want to be able to pay employees, salary and benefit package to be able to attract and maintain good people. But where else can can we recognize some savings? And that's the give and take of negotiations. So you know, where else to do that at this point in time? I don't have, the almighty suggestion on that. Again, if I'm told or directed saying this is where we need to be, I'll come back with recommendations on how to get there and keep you informed on what services may be adversely affected. I think that's my role. So you can make the best decision possible on the bottom line.
I also think it's tougher at this juncture. Like when you talk about cutting positions, I think if we're talking about cutting stuff here that's not gonna affect the day-to-day operations of the town. I think at the witching hour, it's tougher, you know, well, we wanna cut, just like you said, just cut to go, we wanna just cut some money, I think it's more difficult now. To know all the effects, we wanna cut, like, let's say with 3 positions in any department.
I know.
It's tough for us
I
to,
don't know where that number came from.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
talking
somebody put it out there.
I don't know.
I threw it out, because that's
Whatever.
240,000
no, but whatever,
and
just saying.
80,000, because I'm going
It doesn't
by,
matter. It's
and
one,
by the
two-
way, I'm going by the younger person's, because you went by the bottom of the list salary before, right? 80,000 with healthcare, because they don't
I'm
get
just saying,
much
it's
pension.
tougher at this point to
longevity.
just go to know what other effects that it'll
So-
have at this point.
If I may, Kristen, what would something like that look like? I know, I'm not saying that's where we're going, but 240,000 more out of the expense.
It's not that we trying to get to a number. Sherry's still here.
I think she had a family commitment at 7:30.
Do we have, just curiosity, give us an answer tomorrow, she's not here. I know they posted that position to go down to sewer. Do you have an idea of how many people may have applied for it and where they may have come from?
It is an open bid. I believe it's expected to be filled within 2 days. And I don't know offhand who bid for it, but I believe at least one is coming to DPW.
But there could be somebody else from another department right here too, but we just don't. So is there a way you can,
Internally, but
like, I don't want the names, just department of where they may have bid from. And we can make a decision from there too.
You're saying, maybe, are you
So
saying?
are you basically saying don't fill that position?
Well, we don't know where it's coming from,
Well,
so
but
we
I mean-
can't, so again,
well, it's outside of wastewater, so.
yeah, it's
No, I know
outside of
that.
wastewater,
I know
different
that.
budget, so it's coming from our budget,
Yeah,
more than likely.
no, I understand
So
that.
for instance, I'll just say somebody from Sarah's office puts in for it and gets it. And we come back to Sarah and say, do we need to fill that position? Or Kristen, somebody from your office put in for it,
Tools that we need to.
you know,
To
then,
explore.
then
But
that's what we
And
can
again,
look at.
it's me,
But I
that's
think
like, that's an
that's part of the-
ongoing,
That's not the budget process, that's part of the management process that we can direct, that we should be doing that, and that we're not going to fill that position, that's fine.
Yeah, but that position shouldn't be in the budget, right? That cost
Because then we're taxing on the position.
So in other words, yeah, that, if so, that's one.
But then,
if you had the foresight and you knew you were gonna do it, or it was properly negotiated in a timely manner.
Right.
Then that's clear and obvious. If it's not, then it's during the year, making adjustments, you know, we're running. If our revenues aren't looking good or our expenditures are high, then, you know, then I have to consider doing a spending freeze or a hiring freeze or whatever is responsible as we move along.
which we would
But-
expect you to do,
But, you know, these things that we're talking about now haven't been negotiated. And so I don't think it precludes you from making a recommendation and voting on it and doing it, and then we have to deal with the ramifications. But I don't think under that scenario, if you're not filling a vacancy, that's one thing. If it's another way, then obviously you're gonna end up doing layoffs, and that has cost associated with it too. It's not a flat savings of, it's not a flat savings of salary benefits.
no. So I guess the part that is really the obstacle here is what you need to do. Because what I'm hearing is, even if we say go and do that, the likelihood of it being that number on May 8th seems to be remote at this point. I'm just, I think that's what.
I'm being honest and true when I tell you I'm not chasing a number, but I can't say that for everybody that sits up here. So that might appease some others. If you know where I'm going.
Yeah, I do, but.
Well, to answer your question, if we cut $240,000 more with the new 97.7% collection rate and the 150,000 in revenue adjustment, it would be a 1.30% tax rate increase.
So if just cut that to get to 130 doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of seems more like, what are the other negative effects from the town? What other costs could be associated by doing that?
And I think again, if Jeff has said he needs the people there. I agree that if this position that we're talking about, if it's coming from within, you know.
A department that can afford to lose one,
That
if that's deemed.
and then you're saying, well, it's not in the budget, and you might have surplus, and you might, but that would allow you to not have to make as high a tax rate increase going forward the next
Awesome.
time. You know, it's a savings that you have now that you put in the piggy bank and you don't,
But we're not touching the piggy bank.
but if it grows, that's okay. So maybe
trust me, I wanna
that
get to
4%,
that.
that 4% will cover it, because we might have something where we might be able to dip in at that point in time, but not currently.
Hmm.
I wouldn't do it just for the sake of doing it to get to a number. That just doesn't make sense to me. But if you wind up with a little surplus because you have an
I'm
open
gonna be-
position all year,
Open and honest, 175 sounds phenomenal compared to what we walked into. We lost 1%,
correct?
basically.
Yep.
And that's wonderful, and I think it's great. I just want to make sure we're maximizing our efforts in financially protecting the taxpayers.
And I think, again, I think the town manager and the management group and Kristen have presented to us after months and months of going round and round. And oh, by the way, this budget has absolutely no capital provision in it. You know, likely that we're gonna need some at some point. I mean,
No doubt.
there's something's gonna happen, so I'm confident, and you point blank just asked the DPW director. And I just, again, it feels like we're chasing a number at this point in time. If we can do this, but it's fair warning, I hope, to everybody that this is real. So, but that still doesn't help you, because, I mean, it was a motion a second, and then we didn't vote, I don't think.
We do that twice. We do that twice.
You always vote in second, then you.
I'm
vote
saying,
in
is there
third.
anything else?
Yeah.
Well, I gotta ask, because
Roll call
you never
vote.
know who's standing up and ready to come with, something in the end.
I rest my case. How's that?
Any other comment from the
I'm
public?
done.
Excuse me.
For the third time, I'm gonna make a motion to approve.
I'm taking the motion. I'm voting.
Okay, all right.
But you were voting on the original motion?
Yes, yeah,
Oh, they're the same motion.
And I'm
They
sorry,
are.
did you stand because you had something, sir?
no, Manny's. Because he saw it, it's ready to go. Yeah.
Mine too.
All right, I'm gonna take a roll call vote. Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
I'll vote yes to move forward.
We have to adjourn to go to the next. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
I.
Opposed? We're gonna be going on to the Civic Center budget.
I'll stand up, Warwick.
Civic Center is, we're not voting on anything, it's just another public hearing.
Oh, Tom, I'm sorry.
Are you in session on the next?
No. We're going in session on the second.
To harp on. DPW.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Jeff.
Jeff, thank you, Jeff, hold on. To harp on Jeff's point, where your blood pressure went through the roof.
8:27 PM, fiscal 26 public hearing for West Warwick Civic Center. Hi, Laura.
Good evening.
Roll call taken.
Oh, sorry.
Yes,
roll call.
just noting for the record that Councilman Messier, Councilman Jennison, Council Vice President Williamson, and Council President Goslin are here, and Councilman LaCharlie is absent. Quorum is declared.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you, Lori.
So from the workshop to the public hearing, all the same, nothing changed. That's it, that's all I got. Yeah.
Any questions for Lori?
Oh, good job over there.
You're gonna start generating revenue for the town.
I do.
No, you go this way and this way, it's 0, 0 at the end, but you're gonna start
Fine.
generating revenue
Well,
for the town.
because it's an enterprise, that's the rules.
0, 0 is better than where it was.
No, I know, but
The rules. I only follow the rules, I don't make the rules.
You don't always follow them. Yeah.
any questions for Lori?
Laura, are we getting the advertising revenue out of that scoreboard that we were planning on?
Not yet, but we're working on it. Very slow at it. Like now that he got my money for the scoreboards, he's very slow at responding and working with me.
What do you need to help you get that revenue? Just more.
I need another
word of mouth?
Lori, that's what I need.
Is it that it's just people don't know there's an opportunity?
Yeah, I
to
mean, it's just
advertise?
basically that, and it's just coming down to just not having enough time to spend doing that. I mean, you know, each person that comes in, each organization feels that their organization needs all of my attention. All the time. Like,
No,
all the
So there's no
time.
sponsor on that scoreboard right now?
On any of the scoreboards, no.
The ones
Would
that-
you like to put some sponsorship on? I'll call you tomorrow. I mean, what's the worst that anyone can say to me is no, not like that's ever happened. I mean, very rarely, but
When you say he is not responsible, who is he?
he is the person that we got the scoreboards from. The company.
Was he supposed to help you with that?
Yeah.
In
Is
what
that the
way?
contract?
He had people that were.
Yeah,
willing
he
to-
had people that get you to, I mean, he had a person that you reach out to and go forward.
That's no longer available, or they're just not responsible?
They're just very slow at it. They have bigger, better. I
Are
mean,
you
you
able
know,
to work outside of that person? Or is there an agreement where you have to use?
there's no
them?
agreement. It's just the sizing and, you know, they
Right.
have all the stuff and whatnot, so.
So if you went to him with, hey, I've got ABC company that wants to sponsor my scoreboard, he just has to make the sign, like the.
Yeah, 'cause
that's-
don't they
I
get, don't
believe
they get a
that they
credit?
get, yeah, they get a percentage of it.
So that
you
should
know,
be
and then
incentive to
once
them.
It should be,
Yeah.
incentive. You would think he would want to maximize his.
And don't they
revenue.
get, correct me if I'm wrong, don't they get a bigger percentage in the beginning and then less?
I mean,
after?
I honestly have been seriously considering just getting a ladder and measuring it and figuring what the sizes would be and
Getting your
Well,
own.
you
Getting my
must
own.
have specs that they can give you.
I'm
Mark,
sure
maybe you want to
the
weigh in.
purchasing file probably
yeah,
has
you
all that.
probably do.
And
but-
I don't want to get into, I would suggest not getting into talking about that vendor without them
Right,
being
Yeah.
able to be
we're
here.
here to talk.
Yeah.
I think some of the problem is we weren't responsive enough initially
Yeah.
to get some things done, so we can't put it all on the vendor. There was some timeliness things that we couldn't be aggressive for a few reasons in getting that done at the time of installation. So it's an ongoing project that needs to get pushed back on the front burner.
Unlike the last topic, I didn't mean to open a can of worms.
You're
I just saw the 25,000, I was like, I saw advertising income.
So advertising is not only just that,
Right,
though. It's,
right.
you know, I mean, I have a mini melt machine in there. We get,
You have the regular banners up there.
yeah, I have the banners, I have, Live Barn.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
that's
and
right,
that, yeah, I mean, and honestly, like, Live Barn is wonderful, and it's also probably the worst thing that could have went in there. I mean, you know, for a high school hockey game, you know, as a grandparent, you used to come. Well, now you can sit at home on your couch and watch the game for $14 a month. So,
Guilty. Yep.
yeah, I mean, you came to senior night, and you were like, where are all the people? I'm like, this is it. And it was senior night, I mean, people just don't,
they don't come, you know, like when I first started this job, it was packed in there, but I mean, each of our home teams are co-ops now, so I mean, it's just, unfortunately, it's just, we're losing it to the private schools. So, I mean, they all do try very hard though to keep it going and whatnot, and, you know, you can also see like with the youth leagues, like where COVID came into play at this point, where there's that gap of people being there. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot.
So you're,
Any advertisement on the Zamboni?
I do.
and those are static sources, those aren't gonna fluctuate throughout the year,
No, that's a lot of work.
yeah, the wraps and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Any questions for Lori? Any public comment on the civic center budget? They're lining up.
The lining up to go out the door.
Are we going to vote tonight? Don't we usually have a second public hearing for the enterprise
So
fund?
there was discussion whether we're gonna do them all on the 8th or not.
I
I
say we do
don't
them
know.
all in the eighth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay? I mean, you don't have any other advertising or
Yeah, and
anything
I'd
that
like,
you have to
especially
do?
with Jason not here, I know tonight we moved one forward, but it wasn't the final vote
No.
without him.
Yes,
I think mine just goes to a resolution at this point, right?
Yeah, but I think we're
Yeah,
still gonna
but-
do all three of them the same.
yeah,
Okay,
I thought that's what we
And you and
discussed.
Sue don't need supermajority.
okay,
Correct.
perfect.
Let's make it the ones that I'll take vote to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Have a good night.